Hello, thank you for joining us for our very first live question and answer session for the 2021 to 2022 resident assistant application process. We're very excited to have you watching us tonight. We're watching us later down the line on our YouTube or our Facebook. My name is Kaila Kowalski. I'm an assistant director for Residence Life and Education here in the Department of Housing and Residence Life at the University of Central Florida. And part of my role includes overseeing our student staff selection processes and our student staff selection committee, which includes our resident assistant application. I'm joined here by my awesome grad. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, my name's Hailee. I'm the graduate coordinator for selection and leadership. I'm really excited to be here today.
Awesome. So Hailee and I are here for the next hour to answer any questions you may have about the resident assistant application. It is a very lengthy process, and we know you may have some questions about the application, the interview, or anything in between. And so feel free to drop a comment in the comments of this video, and we will answer them throughout this video. We've also put a call out and have collected some questions over the past week to be able to answer those here as well. And now Hailee and I have been doing this for a while, and so we also kind of are going to read to you some questions that we typically get throughout the years in regards to the resident assistant application. And so we'll start by Hailee kind of giving us a little bit of an overview about the process, and then we look forward to hearing some questions by you.
Hello once again. So as Kaila said, the process for applying to be an RA, the application already opened. It opened on July 1st. The link is ucf.ereslife.com, and that's res with a Z. The application is open there, it's right there. The application is open until October 1st, so you have until October 1st to complete it. And by the time you submit your application, there are 2 references that have to be a part of your application, and they will not get notified until you submit your application. So their deadline is going to be October 2nd.
Yeah, and please keep in mind that this application is for positions starting in spring 2021, only a limited number of vacancies we may have, but for the majority of you going through this application, your hiring timeline would be for May 2021 to May 2022. I know that seems like it's very far away right now, but we do have full staff for this year, so this application is for 2021 to 2022. And so we're going to get started with some questions.
All right, so our first question is, what are the requirements to become an RA? So I'll start with one of the requirements. You have to have 24 completed credit hours by the time you begin your position. So if you're a freshman right now and you're taking 12 credit hours, you would not be eligible to start in the spring. But if you take 12 credit hours in the fall and 12 credit hours in the spring, you would be eligible to start in May. Okay, do you want to popcorn back and forth with requirements?
Sure. So another requirement in terms of eligibility is that you must be enrolled as a full-time student. So we do allow our Valencia students to work at our Union West campus. And so at our Union West campus and the downtown campus. And so Valencia students are eligible there, and UCF students are eligible here and at Union West as well.
And then another requirement is all of our RAs must have a 2.5 GPA to be considered.
Awesome. And then another requirement is that you must have a clear conduct record. I know that may be a little confusing to some people. So if you were a part of our conduct process or you have been a part of that in the past and you have questions about what that looks like in terms of your personal record, you can always email us at reslifeselection, res with an S, not a Z, and we'll be able to kind of give you your personal information from that way.
I think that's all of the requirements. Am I missing anything, Kaila?
Nope, that's it.
Awesome.
All right, so where can you work as an RA? I kind of started talking about that a little bit. So UCF RAs will work at our main campus and our affiliate properties. And so that includes everything you see on the main campus, including towers, including Northview, including Libra and Apollo and Lake Claire, as well as the academic village areas of Neptune, Nike, and Hercules. This includes Knight Circle, which, if you're familiar, is a affiliate property. This includes Union West, and this also includes Rosen. And so all of those properties are staffed by UCF RAs.
Where do RAs live? RAs will live in their assigned community. So when you apply to be an RA, you will, if hired, will get an email that explains your community and says congratulations, and you will reside in that community. So say, for example, you are a spring hire. If you currently live in Nike, but you are assigned Neptune for your RA community, then you will move from Nike to Neptune at the start of your position.
Yeah, it's important to clarify that's a big part of being an RA is living in your assigned space. And so when you accept the position, you accept that specific assignment, and you will kind of agree to live in that space that we will provide for you. All right, so what can someone applying to be an RA do now to become a better candidate? That's an awesome question. So when we're looking at RAs, we try to think about our UCF student population, right? So we have close to 70,000 students at our downtown Union West campus. That includes our Valencia students living down there. That's a diverse group of students, and we want our RAs to reflect that diverse group as best as possible. And so when we're looking for RAs, we're literally looking for anyone, right? We're looking for a first-generation student. We're looking for someone who has, a STEM background, someone with an education background, somebody who has worked a bunch of jobs, somebody who has never worked a job, somebody who's an exchange student, somebody who's a native Floridian, right? We're looking for anybody. If you have the desire to want to work to be an RA, we train you on literally everything else. And so sometimes, people ask Hailee and I, "Oh, I'm nervous. Am I going to be able to be an RA? I've never had a job before." And that's okay. We have a ton of RAs who this is their first job. This is a great first job because we teach you a ton of transferable skills. But in terms of what you want to bring into the position, we're just looking for someone who has that can-do attitude, that's ready to learn, and is excited to make a better experience in the lives of their fellow students. And so in terms of what you can do now, obviously the more you can get involved, will give you these experiences that you can talk about in your interview. And so if you are looking at joining organizations, get involved with those and get experiences. Start learning about what it means to be on a team, what it means to be a part of our UCF and our Union West Valencia community, and start to kind of experience those things for yourself. Even virtually, you can still get involved. Hailee and I, we also co-advise these two student organizations. One is called the Residence Hall Association. One is called the National Residence Hall Honorary. The Residence Hall Association is kind of like a student government in high school, if you're familiar with that, but it's here in college, and it's for all of our residential communities. So if you are living in the Towers community, there is a Towers Area Council. There is a Union West Area Council. There is a Libra Area Council. And those area councils are elected students that live in the building. So students just like you that live in that building, that may be their first week in college. You may have not even moved in yet, and you can still apply to be on that area council. And you'll have one-on-one support from a graduate level coordinator or a full-time level coordinator to help you build your leadership skills and help make a better experience for yourself and your fellow residents. Now, those applications are available now on rhaucf.com. So if you're interested, you can check that out. And that's a great opportunity to learn what it's like to be a part of housing. There it is, rhaucf.com. So taking on experiences like that, other jobs you may have, thinking about how they've helped shape you, how they've helped mold you, and then really thinking to yourself, why do you want to be an RA? A lot of times you may have seen it in a movie, you may have a sibling or a parent or a friend who had an RA or who was an RA, but really think about why you want the job, what interests you about it, and what do you think you're going to gain from it? That way, when you come to the interview, you're kind of ready to talk about those things. So even if you've never had a job before, maybe you're a sibling, maybe you've worked on a group project in high school, you can take those tangible skills and you can talk about them in the interview, right? So if we ask you about an experience with someone who maybe was upset, it's okay if you weren't working in customer service. You may know what it was like to work on a group project or to interact with somebody, and you can give us some good examples. And so basically, anything you do now, you can think about it in a way that'll help you prepare you to be the best candidate.
What is the interview process like? So we, for the first time, are going to be doing our interviews virtually this year. They will take place over Zoom. You'll get a lot of information leading up to that on what that's going to look like, but something we're really, really excited about as a portion of our interview is a little bit different this year. It's going to be a roughly 2-minute presentation at the beginning of your interview that's going to be basically like a show and tell. So you're going to find something that's important to you, or, you know, if you want to do a picture and talk about a special memory, whatever you'd like. And that's going to be how you start off your interview. So I'm trying to think of like something random in my office to give an example. So I got this pen. I was in a sorority in undergrad, and I was an exec member of the sorority, and I got to go to Arizona for the national convention, and they passed out these pens. It has my sorority's insignia on it, and it was really neat because that's something that I'm going to be able to tangibly use all the time while I'm working. Remember the awesome experience I have of being able to go to Arizona for a week and meet all of my sorority sisters nationwide, and that's an experience I will never forget. So a little bit shorter than 2 minutes, but that's going to be what kicks off your interview. So make sure to really use it to tell us something about yourself, and you know, put your personality out there. We know it's kind of hard via video to get yourself across all the time. It's a lot easier in person. So use that time to showcase yourself and what you're really excited about. Anything. We are open to all your creative ideas on how to do that 2-minute presentation. We're really excited for what this might bring.
Yeah, and just a little bit more about the interview process. So it'll kind of be like we've got here. So there'll be 2 professional staff members interviewing you. And so let's say it's Hailee and myself. We'll be here, you know, your little picture will pop up on the screen as well. And we'll introduce ourselves, and then we'll ask you some questions. So I may ask a question, then Hailee asks a question, you answer, and then at the end, we'll leave you time to ask us some questions about the position, about anything you can think of. And so that's kind of how the structure of the interview process will be. And now hopefully you've watched the informational video by now. If you haven't yet watched the informational video, remember that's a required component of the application. There's a ton of information there about the dates and the timelines, and some more information about the application specifically. So when you watch that video, you'll see that we're going to notify all of the people selected to interview by October 18th. So last year alone, we had just close to 1,000 people start an application for this position, and we interviewed about 300. And so don't let that number scare you. We do really want to hire the best candidates. We want to interview the best candidates, and we know you've got what it takes. And so, you know, take your time on your application. Make sure you follow the rules in terms of the word limits and everything like that. And take your time to write your answers, and know that we will invite about 300 people to our interview process. The 300 number may seem a little large to you, but in case you don't know, we have 199 RAs here on our campus. And so we, you know, roughly have about half that decide to return each year. So we hire about 100 each year. So after 300 interviews, then we hire roughly about 100 from that pool. So definitely make sure you take the time, make sure you talk to your references, get everything in on time. But yeah, thank you for explaining the interview process, Hailee. All right, so what is an RA and what are the RA job duties? So an RA is essentially another student leader that lives in the community to be a support system for the other residents in the community. Transitioning to college can be tough. Living in college, whether it's your second or third year, you still may have a ton of questions. UCF is big, right? It's a large campus. There are a lot of resources. And sometimes, whether you've been here for a week or a year, you might not know how to take advantage of some of those resources, or what maybe makes the most sense for a certain situation you're in. And RRAs are trained to support you and to kind of help you as the residents through those situations. Now, sometimes they're there to give referrals and say, hey, you should check out this organization. Or, hey, I see that you're struggling with this thing. Maybe check out the Student Academic Resource Center. Or maybe you're having a conflict with a roommate, or residents are having conflicts. RAs are there. They've learned conflict management strategies, and they can help the 2 residents, 3 residents, 4 residents talk through some ways that they can support each other and live harmoniously in their residential room. And so RAs are there for a lot of those specific reasons in terms of connecting. Really building community is the key. That's what we want our RAs to do, is to create a community where the students that live on their floor or in their building feel like that's their home away from home. You're here with us for a year, you're here with us for 9 months, however long you may live with us, and we want you to feel like this is your home away from home. And honestly, the best way we can do that is by having amazing RAs who create that welcoming experience and who serve as a point of contact. Of course, some other job duties are administrative. Now, we mentioned our portfolio includes about 199 RAs, roughly 12,000 residents. So we do have to have some administrative things in order to make sure that a resident in Northview is having, a somewhat consistent experience as a resident in Towers or in Libra or in Ninth Circle. And so we do have some administrative processes. We make sure our RAs check their email. We want to make sure they're trained on how to properly write our incident reports. And so if something happens in an area or a community, we know how to follow up accordingly. If a policy violation happens, the RAs will write a documentation called an incident report that our staff can read, so we know how to follow up. Maybe there's a leaking toilet, we need to write a work order. So we train our staff on how to do a lot of these administrative processes, as well as the overall safety and security. So in terms of maybe a fire alarm that goes off, sometimes coming to college, some students are still learning how to do things like cook macaroni and cheese. It's okay. It happens, but hopefully not this year and hopefully not from you. Sometimes we'll forget to add that water, right? So then there may be a fire alarm, and how do we make sure students know how to evacuate safely? So there's a lot of different job duties, but one thing that's really important to know is that you're going to be an RA on a team, right? So if you're hired, it's not just you, it's you and maybe 7 to 33 others on your team that you can work with and you can get advice and support from, in addition to your either graduate coordinator or graduate coordinator and a full-time professional staff coordinator that are all there to support you and teach you and help you kind of learn the roles and responsibilities throughout the year.
When do RAs work? So this is a great question. RAs have a duty night every single week. So once a week, you will work in the office of your community starting at 4:45. And then you'll be in charge of that office if people have questions or if they need a lockout or if they have some maintenance questions, that's you. So you'll be a team, just like Kaila said, of anywhere between 2 and 3 RAs in a community per night. And then you also, every few weekends or so, we'll have a weekend duty shift. So the weekend duty shifts are split among the entire staff for each community. And this will start from Friday at 4:45 and go all the way until Saturday at 4:45. So for a full 24-hour period, you are on duty. And so you'll have from 4:45 until later that evening, you'll be in the office once again, just like a regular duty night. And then you'll take that office phone with you back to your room. You can go to sleep or, watch movies until you go to sleep or whatever. And you just have to have your phone on you in case there is a call. But like Kaila said, you are always supported by other staff members. So if on that duty shift, there is a fire alarm, like Kaila was talking about, someone forgot to put water in, and, you hear the alarm and you're not sure if it's a real fire or just a fire alarm or just some smoke from burnt mac and cheese, you start that evacuation process and then you immediately call the graduate coordinator on call. The graduate coordinator will respond. They can call up to the coordinator as well if necessary, if it is like an actual fire where they may need some extra backup. But you are always supported and always have a team. So never think that, if you're on duty for this 24-hour period, it is just you and good luck. No, we would never do that. And we always support our staff. That's when they work more scheduled. But there are also some other administrative duties like Kaila talked about that can be done more fluidly throughout the day whenever you have your free time. So this can include your roommate mediations, room checks, anything like that is more so done on your available time. It's not in a specific shift time period.
Thank you. I just want to elaborate on that one just real fast before we get to this awesome question. So I just want to clarify that this application is for starting in, like I said, in summer of 2021. And so kind of more larger scale, all the RAs that apply that are hired for our full year will start in summer 2021. So typically, majority of our residence halls are open during the summer months. And so we have all 199 RAs that should be expected to work during the summer months. And then we are able to make a limited number of exceptions for things, maybe medical needs, maybe a study abroad trip, things like that. But when you do apply for the job, you may be like, well, I'm interested in being an RA for, fall 2021. If you're interested in fall 2021, then you're going to want to click summer 2021 because that's when the position will start. And if for some reason you can't work, then you can request an exception and a limited number of exceptions can be granted. So I just want to answer that before we jump into this question. All right, so Colleen asks, will there be organized functions that the RAs will put together? So yes, so just to kind of answer that in two parts, for this current year, the RAs are doing a lot of virtual things and working to adapt of our needs of our students, right? So, we're following all the proper guidelines by the CDC, by the university, and our Office of Student Involvement, as well as our department, to put on a lot of virtual events to connect to our students. And so we have community meetings that are going on that RAs facilitate. And so currently they're virtual, but in the future, when we can be in person again, RAs will be facilitating community meetings a couple times a semester. And that's a time where everybody that lives on that floor or in that building will come together and get to know each other, learn the policies, learn some of the rules, but also get to connect and do some icebreaker kind of activities. Additionally, RAs will have one-on-one conversations with each of their residents just to make sure they're really making those connections. RAs will also promote a lot of the area council events and a lot of the RHA events to make sure that residents kind of can find their niche and things that they're going to, as well as promote a lot of the campus programs. So our Office of Student Involvement has a ton of programming. So Pegasus Palooza is coming up. There's a ton of events happening across campus, and especially virtually right now. So the RAs will be able to promote that. And then from time to time, the RAs might work together either with their area council or just as a group of RAs to put together a social event for their floor and their building. So maybe they'd want to do a movie night, or maybe there is like a cool game that's out or a card game or something like that they want to put together. There is opportunities for RAs to get creative and do more formalized events like that, but they can also do some impromptu things. So if everybody on the floor is a fan of Big Brother, which I am, so I'm watching right now, right? So if everybody on the floor building is a fan of Big Brother, maybe they'll have a Big Brother watching party that night. So definitely opportunities for RAs to see what their residents are interested in addition to having some structured things like community meetings and other events that we would expect everybody to attend.
Where do RAs live and what are their rooms like? So I'll answer the first part first. RAs live in every single community that we have on campus, from the ones that we own and manage all the way to our P3. So that includes Academic Village, Neptune, Nike, and Hercules, Libra and Apollo, Lake Claire, all four towers, Northview, Night Circle, Rosen, and Union West. I think I call all of them. Yes. Yes. So they live in every single building, and their rooms are just dependent on where they live. So different buildings, different communities, different rooms. But with that, their stipend that they're paid, so they have an overall sum, that's their stipend. And then the rent for that building that would usually be charged to any student, regardless if they're an RA or not, would be deducted from that amount, and that's how much they would get paid. So then that's divided every 2 weeks throughout the year. So it's hard to answer what are their rooms like, because some are private rooms, some have roommates, some have full kitchens, some have partial kitchens. It's all over the place. So it's hard to say specifically, just blanketed, what are their rooms like.
All right, when you apply, do you get to choose which community you will be placed in? So on the application, there is a section where you can preference which communities you're interested in. So if you are interested in a certain community, you can preference that by clicking and dragging it over. It's important to note that you should click every community you're interested in. So maybe you lived in Neptune, so you really like Neptune, but you're willing to work anywhere. Then you can click and drag all of them order. You can put Neptune first, maybe you put Nike and Hercules next, maybe Towers next. You can put them in order, and we'll see that when we do our selection processes. Our staff will be able to see that. Now, what I do want to point out is two things. One, both our Rosen and Union West campus are not located on our main campus. So if you're not familiar with that, our Rosen campus and our Union West campus are both about 20 to 30 minutes away. Could be an hour away depending on traffic, but roughly 20 to 30 minutes away. And so if you select those areas, you drag them over, then you'll be considered for a position there. So if you're not interested in living and working at Rosen or living and working at Union West, then don't click and drag those two over. And that doesn't mean you're any less of a qualified candidate. I promise people always ask, like, should we just click everything? Hailee and I aren't sitting back here looking like, ooh, they're only interested in these 6 communities. We really want to know what you're interested in. However, I would say that if you only select Neptune, so you lived in Neptune, you only select Neptune, then when we go to kind of run everything and look at our lists, we're only going to consider you potentially for Neptune. And so you may only be considered for one of 6 or 7 openings. Versus if you collect all of the communities, say you click Night Circle and Northview and everything else, maybe except Rosen Union West if you're not interested, then you'll be considered for, almost 100, one of 170 vacancies. And so you really should drag over all that you're willing to live in. And I'd also kind of say that we may select you for a community that you didn't select because we think you're a good fit, right? So, I talked earlier about trying to represent our students. We really want to make sure that we hire a really awesome and a really diverse group of students as RAs in each community. And so on your application, you'll see some questions that start off that are kind of like would you rather questions, right? Would you rather work now, play later? Would you rather work in a team or work autonomously? Those are not scored. Those are just a way for us to get to know you. We want a balance, right? Anytime you have a team, you need some people who are going to be the go-getters and like take it and do action right now. And you need some people who are going to sit back and think through things and say, well, what if we tried it this way? And what if we tried it this way? You need those people who are going to be the cheerleaders, and you need those people who are good at math and good at numbers and good at calculating schedules, right? You really want a well-balanced group of people to create an RA team. And so if we review, our staff sees your application and we're like, wow, this candidate would be awesome in Tower 2. And maybe you only selected Libra as the only community you're interested in, we may still offer you a position in Tower 2 because we think you'd be a great fit there. Ultimately, the decision will come down to our hiring managers, who are our coordinator staff in our communities, to select who they think is the best fit for their community. And so you do get to preference, and we do care, and we do take into consideration. But what we tend to find is that a lot of students will preference only what they've lived in previously. And a lot of our students come from the main campus, Academic Village, Libra, Apollo, Lake Claire. We can't only hire for those communities, and we can't only hire returning students to Towers or Northview. So it's really important that you select all the ones you might be interested in and that you are open to working in any of our communities.
What is the most challenging part of being an RA? So I was never an RA, but definitely what I see from our students and what I would guess would probably be time management. There's a lot that goes into an RA. You are really supposed to be super involved in your community, getting to know everyone on your floor. Plus, you have all of your classes and any other extracurriculars that you're into. So I think that time management is one of the most important and sometimes the most challenging when it might be the student's first time having to deal with time management, especially with a first-time job or freshmen in college and they're not used to their workload, or as they get accepted into their programs and have a higher workload throughout the year. I think that's something that I would say challenges them most, but also helps them grow more than anything else. I think that's one of the best learning experience that we offer to our RAs and all of our student staff is help in time management and learning how to professionally manage their time appropriately.
Who should I pick as my references? That's a great question. And so just to kind of clarify, 2 references are required for every application. And Hailee mentioned earlier, the deadline for references to be submitted is exactly 24 hours after the application closes. So the application closes at 11:59 on October 1st. Your references are due, like they have to be completed and turned in, submit by 11:59 on October 2nd. Now you may be thinking like, what? They only have 24 hours to complete their reference? That's up to you. And so if you submit your application tomorrow, what's tomorrow? August 20th, then your references will be notified on August 20th. And they will have from August 20th to October 2nd at 11:59 p.m. to complete the reference form. So that means as soon as you finish your application and you click submit, that's when your references get notified. So if you started your application and you maybe put their information in there, they're not going to find out yet. They won't get the link. They won't know you select them as a reference until you completely finish your application. And so although your application is not due until the 1st at 11:59 p.m., we highly encourage you to not only talk to your references in advance and let them know the timeline, but try your best to get your application completed as soon as you can to give your references as much time as possible. Now, in regards to who you should pick as references, there are only a few limitations. Otherwise, you really can pick a variety of people. So certain things you cannot pick is you cannot pick a family member, right? So, Uncle Jim may love you and think that you are the best, but Uncle Jim might be a little bit biased. And so we want to make sure that it is somebody who's either seen you in some sort of leadership capacity. It could be another student that you worked with. It could be maybe you worked at Publix, and that could be your manager. It could be a coworker that's worked with you. It could be, a friend that was in some group projects with you that watched you take lead. It could be your RA if you formed a relationship with them. It could be a former boss or a supervisor. We would love for at least one of them to be from the UCF or Valencia community, because that can really speak to, your time here. We recognize that many of you watching this or many of you applying may just be moving into UCF, right? Maybe you haven't met anyone here yet. You do not need to ask your professor on the first day of class, hey, I'm applying to be an RA. I know you've never met me, and now we're talking virtually. Can you be my reference? Don't do that. Don't do that. Find someone who you think can truly speak to your experience. And so if that's two people from high school, maybe it was a guidance counselor, an advisor, someone from a previous job, select them. We'd much rather see two people who can really speak to your strengths as a leader versus someone that works at UCF that's never really interacted with you. So we want you to know that although it's preferable that someone from the UCF or Valencia community is there, just because it kind of shows us your collegiate involvement, we also do not take away any points or anything like that if they're not from UCF. However, we will not count the application as completed if your references are a family member. And so that means you may have an awesome application, but if one of your references says mom and relationship says mother, and they say, outstanding, we're not going to count that, which means your application won't be considered completed and you won't move on in our process. So very important to make sure that you're selecting someone who isn't a family member to complete those applications, to complete those references. And then just a helpful tip, again, we've seen this throughout the time. Oftentimes on October 3rd, I get tons of emails from references who are outraged that I only gave them 24 hours to complete their reference form. And I always respond back and say that, the deadline was given to the candidate. They were aware that they wouldn't send their notifications to references until the application closed. So we can't accept that. So that's really important. One thing I do want to show you, we can pull up our PowerPoint real fast onto slide number 15 called How to Apply. Let's see if we can pull this up here. Let me see if I can share this here. All right, so if you see this right here, this How to Apply, I know it's kind of small. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. No, all right, well, you can see it like this. So if you see this here on the right-hand side, I know it's a little bit small, but this top box is a green check. Next to your reference, if it looks like this, you are set. You want 2 green checks. If it looks like this, a little yellow-gray, that means you're still waiting for your reference to submit their reference. And so it's really important that you monitor your application to see that there are 2 green checks. Because yes, your reference, it's on them to complete it, but this is your application. And so ultimately, if they don't complete it, it's on you. And because your application won't be complete. So Hailee and I are here to support you through this. If you submit your application in September and it is middle to end of September and your reference said that they would complete it and they still haven't reached out to you and they're not responding to you and you want to change it to somebody else, you can email reslifeselection@ucf.edu and we will fix that for you. We will create a new reference name, we'll put in a new email, and we'll send a new link. So I do really want to stress this because every year we have to remove dozens of people from our pool just because their references weren't completed. And so it is important that, you're aware that it's your responsibility to check your application. So, that last week of September, be taking a look at your application. You can view it and see, does it say completed or does it say awaiting response? If you can see this one here, underneath where it says awaiting response, there's this blue box. This says send notification. That's a way for you to be like, click send reminder. So, my high school principal who's filling it out will get an email reminder. Another tip that we've learned, sometime education systems, so like school districts, they may make our email go to spam. So this email is coming from eResLife at UCF or at ereslife.com. And so make sure that your references check their spam for eResLife, EREZLIFE. They can check it there. If they have any problems or they can't find it and you've submitted your application completely, which means you see this green check on your application page, then again, you can email us and we'll be able to help you with that.
All right, so our next question, what would you say to someone who's worried about applying because they are more introverted? Thank you, Reagan. This is a great question. First, I would say apply. As Kaila was talking earlier, the beginning of your application is a this or that. And one of the questions are, are you more introverted or extroverted? And once again, we really want diverse staff. It's so important to us that we have a mix between extroverted and introverted students. Our extroverted students, maybe when we're doing these big programs, maybe they're the ones that are leading them and talking about the instructions, making sure everyone's involved, being the big communicators. But when we were planning for this project at the very beginning, maybe it's the more introverted students that we had that created some of these creative ideas, or maybe it's some of the ones who maybe thought about some of these questions. So we really want both types of students, and we're going to work with and help and grow both types of students, introverted and extroverted. So I would definitely tell them to apply and that they would have a great time.
Should I pick as a reference someone that is or that used to be an RA? Sure, that's a great idea. Someone who's an RA definitely understands what it means to be an RA, and they can probably think through your experience and your leadership to determine, a genuine reference for you. So I would say if you have a good relationship with them and you feel like, they've seen you in a leadership capacity, then I would absolutely recommend picking someone who is or was an RA. One thing I would say as a tip, and any of our current RAs who are out there watching may agree with me. As a former RA, I can definitely agree with this, that if you're going to ask your RA, please make sure, anybody you're going to ask, you should give them ideally at least 2 weeks. As you can imagine, RAs probably get asked from multiple residents to write recommendations and to serve as a reference. And sometimes it takes time, right? They really want to make sure that they are kind of writing the things that they really see about you. And so anyone that you ask for reference, I definitely recommend that you give them at least 2 weeks to complete that reference.
What happens after my application is submitted? So after your application is submitted, every single application is individually reviewed one at a time. I want to stress that because as Kaila said, we had almost 1,000 started applications last year. And I think somewhere around, correct me, Kaila, 600 and 700 finished. I believe somewhere around that number. And our committee went through every single one at a time, read every word of every application. I think that's so important to stress because we take a lot of pride in who we hire, and we want to make sure that we hire and really look at every single individual as an individual. So after your application is submitted, it is thoroughly reviewed, and we go through and we score our different applications. And from those scores, we then determine who's going to be moving forward to our interview. From there, like Kaila said, on October 18th, you will be given notification of if you are selected to an interview, and you're sent a notification on how to select your interview, given the Zoom link, who you'll be interviewing with and everything. And then after your interview, oh, there we go. This is a great image here that has the dates for everything. After we send you, after you have your interview, then you're going to be given an update, either hired for the spring or in our waiting area. In February is when you'll get your update if you have either been selected as an RA or are in the alternate pool.
There you go. This one kind of goes right directly to, Hailee, what you were talking about, the interview timeline. So you can finish talking about the timelines for the interview notifications.
Yes, so interview notifications will go out October 18th, and then you will have until October 20th to select your interview time. So just during that window. Kaila and I always make a great joke. If you see that you got offered an interview on October 18th and you go and you celebrate, you go out of town to have the greatest time because you're so excited you got accepted to an interview, but you forget to sign up on our online system, unfortunately, we cannot make any exceptions for that. So you really do only have until 11:59 on October 20th to select your interview time. From there, interviews will be held via Zoom from October 26th to November 6th. These are all going to be, once again, virtual with 2 pro staff members and the candidate. Interviews will be 60 minutes, and we encourage everyone to dress either business casual or in UCF Valencia spirit. And I began our whole little live Q&A here talking about our show us about yourself presentation. It's a 2 to 5 minute little a way to get to express your personality, because we know that it can be really, really hard virtually to express that.
Yeah, Hailee definitely mentioned the deadlines. It's very important that you know that we do stick very firmly to our deadlines. When we have 1,000 people applying, we don't want to make any exceptions, because if we make an exception for one, it wouldn't be equitable to not make exceptions for others. And so if you already know, like you're looking and you're like, hey, on October 18th to 20th, I already know for whatever reason I won't have access to internet, let us know ahead of time. But if you just don't check your email those days, then please know that we wouldn't be able to re-extend you an interview. So definitely be checking your email and know that by the 18th, we will notify everybody. So if you are not selected for an interview this year, we will still also notify you by October 18th. We would say, thank you for your application. At this time, you're not moving forward to the next stage of the interview process. So that means by the 18th, you will know if you are moving to the interview stage or if you are no longer being considered for the position. So what that means is that if you don't receive an email by the 19th, at that point, feel free to email us and ask us, hey, just want to check in. I didn't get an email. You see, Hailee and I, we're the ones who manage this process, and we are both human. And so we may make a mistake. We may leave an email address off. And so if you catch that error, let us know. And if we've left your email off, we will certainly reach out to you and let you know where you stand in our process. But it's important that you do your diligence in checking your email to let us know if maybe you didn't get an email at a certain time. And so in regards to the by Sunday, October 18th, anytime we put deadlines out there, please know that that's up until the very end of the day, which is 11:59. So know that Hailee and I sometimes are working real hard, and we may not get that email out until a little bit later. We love working during office hours, but when there's 1,000 applications and they don't all get kind of submitted until the end, it's a lot of time to review all of them along with our committee. And so sometimes we may send those notifications out at 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. So it's really helpful to us if you don't email us on Sunday the 18th saying, hey, just wondering, will I get an email today? Because every time that we have to respond to one of those emails, it's less time that we can be reviewing the rest of the process, and the more time it takes for us to get all the notifications out. So we definitely want to make sure that you know that at some point that day, probably later in the evening, but if you don't hear anything by the 19th, then certainly reach out to us. And again, the interviews are the October 26th through Friday, November 6th, between 9 and 5. We understand that not everybody may be here in the Orlando area since we're doing these virtually. You may not be on our campus right now, and that is totally fine. Just know that the interviews are all going to be in Eastern Standard Time. So if you get invited to an interview at 1 o'clock and you select a 1 o'clock interview, that is Eastern Standard Time. So definitely keep that in mind, whether you're in another state or another country. And if you are in another country and these times don't work for you, please let us know. We will do our best to make sure we can accommodate your schedule.
On average, how many hours a week would be committed to being an RA? Could you also explain a little bit more about the stipend that you mentioned? So I'll take the first part of the question. How many hours a week would be committed to being an RA? about roughly 20 hours, but that is definitely an average. So there may be some weeks that you only have your one night duty shift and you have nothing else to do that weekend. So that might be 4 or 5 hours of your time, and that might be all you have to do that week. But there may be times like move-in, which we're currently going through right now, where you may work that full 20 hours that week and possibly just a little bit more. Maybe you're at the 25, 30 hours before classes have actually started. Just know that that 20 hours is kind of an average and flows throughout the semester. So when I talked about time management and how important that is, that includes how you delegate your hours per week as an RA. So if you know you have a ton of big tests coming up, it's midterm, and you have a project here, an essay there, and a big test to study for, but you also have room checks. You may want to start those room checks a little bit early, or start studying early and split up your room checks more so over the weeks leading up to it. So just know what you have going on in your own schedule, and you will be able to work around your time as an RA very easily. I'll let Kaila take that second part of the question.
Sure. So in regards to the stipend, as Hailee mentioned, every RA will get the same kind of overall amount, and the way it gets distributed is on a biweekly basis once the room fees are taken out of it. And so the fee associated with living in the assigned space will be subtracted, and then from there, RAs are paid a biweekly amount. And so on the job profile page of eResLife, so I think we have it available. Awesome. So on the job profile page of eResLife, when you go to apply to the job, you can see on the front page, there's a link that says RA PD 2020 to 2021. That's what we've pulled up right here. Now, this is a sample of this past year's position description. So the specific amounts might change for this upcoming year. Sometimes, minimum wage changes, and then we recalculate every single year. But we're scrolling down right now to show you a ton of great information on this PD. We definitely encourage you to review it. But towards the bottom here, we're going to get you to the part where we talk about the compensation. There we are. So as you see the numbers here, this is the biweekly amount that an RA in each community, like I said, for this year is receiving. You could expect it to be pretty similar for the next year, but obviously, times change in terms of minimum wage and the way it's calculated. Every year, we take our RA's timesheets and we calculate it to make sure that we are meeting the appropriate stipend that we've established with them. And so 2019 to 2020, these are the prices here. The stipend amounts here. And it's important to please note that we will pay these stipended amounts during the times that the student works. So let's say that an RA is hired and they are able to excuse from working over winter break. All of our RAs should anticipate working over the break periods, regardless of their community, but we may be able to make some exceptions for some students. So if a student is given an exception and can go home for the winter break and they don't work, then they will not be paid this amount during the time they're not working. So definitely important to know that at times that RAs are working, they will receive this biweekly stipend rate. And so you can kind of see here that it kind of varies. You see starting with Night Circle at around $151, and then different communities get a different amount. So hopefully you will kind of see that a little bit. Again, this is available on the front profile page of the job itself, along with some other really good information about the resident assistant job and requirements.
Can I work another job / internship as an RA? Yes. First, you definitely have to get permission from your coordinator. That's going to be your immediate supervisor. And that job can only be 10 additional hours per week. So we know there's a lot of majors that do require internships as a class or part of the program. That's totally okay, and we work around that. Specifically for a lot of RAs that work down at Rosen, they do some internships at Disney or Universal. All of that is totally okay. It just can't be more than 10 hours a week, and you do have to have permission from your supervisor first. The only reason we do that is if you've already been working as an RA for a semester and say maybe we've had some time management issues, or you started coming late for work on a couple shifts because you already had some extracurricular commitments and you're not able to just manage those already, there may be a conversation between you and your supervisor if getting an extra job is the right move for you at this time based on how much you're able to time manage currently what you have on your plate.
Yeah, the number one reason we do that is because for us, the priority is always our student, right? And so our RAs are students first. They're here to take classes. Like, you're here to be an academic role model. And it's really important that we help you focus on that. It's really easy to get swept up and get really excited about helping your residents and direct them to this resource and direct them to that resource. And then maybe forget that you also have an assignment due. It's a lot of responsibility to kind of be a mentor and be there to be a role model and a resource and a support to other people. And so our job and the job of the supervisors of the RAs is to kind of pull back a little bit and say, how are you doing? Like, you as a RA, as a person, how are you doing? Are you struggling this week? Are you having a rough week? Do you have a lot of exams coming up? As Hailee mentioned, sometimes your supervisor can help you figure out, okay, we've got some, RA responsibilities coming up. How can we make sure you're still studying for midterms? And how can we help you set boundaries in terms of, responding to text or group me or whatever from your residents to make sure that you really are being a student first. It is really important to us. We can't have you be a student leader if you're not doing well as a student or as a human. And so that's really important that your supervisors are there for you. And sometimes when you take on a new job, whether it is, working at Target or is working here, it's a lot to balance the time commitments. And so your supervisors meet with you weekly or bi-weekly to talk with you about how are you doing, making sure you're getting sleep. I know a lot of students like to stay up late, but you still need to get some sleep. You still need to be rested and you need to feel like your best self. And so that's kind of why we have that limitation on the jobs or other internships, is really just to make sure you're doing all right, both inside the job and also outside the job. I think we have time maybe for one or two more questions. All right, so this one says, I'm a first-year student. When is the soonest I can become an RA? Well, I love the eagerness. Very excited that you're ready to jump into the role. And so, Hailee mentioned a little bit back in the very beginning about the credit hours. So you must complete 24 credit hours by the date of your start, by your start date, excuse me. And so let's say right now you're coming in and this is your first semester. Fall 2020 is your first semester. And you're not bringing in any other credits and you're taking 15 credit hours. That is awesome, but that is not 24. And so you are not eligible to start in spring. Now, let's say that you took classes over the summer, or you're transferring in some credits and you're transferring in 12 credits and you're taking 12 credits now, then you would be eligible for spring. Now, obviously, we would need to verify that you passed your classes, meet the GPA requirement, and receive the credits. But if you come in with 12 and you take 12 this semester, that means you will have 24 by January. So you will be eligible to start in January. Now, if you already have a bunch of credits, then that's great, as long as you have the 24. It is important that at least 12 of those credits must be from UCF or Valencia. So if you are a transfer student, this is your first semester here, and you're only taking 6 credit hours, then you're not eligible for spring, even if you've already taken, 115 at another university. 12 must be from UCF or Valencia. So that's really important. And so if you're a first-year student, this is your first semester, you're taking 12, and you take 12 in spring, then you're definitely eligible for our summer hire, so May 2021. All right, let's take maybe one more. Oh.
If I have more questions after this live Q&A, where can I ask them? Well, we do have 2 more that we're going to have that we would love for you to come to and ask us your questions. I think we have a little banner that's going to show them. We'll get that to you later, but we do have a couple more that we're going to have. I can tell you the dates for those right now.
September 10th is our next one.
At 6 p.m. And then September 23rd at 6 p.m. we have another one. We will also have 3 more Q&As with current RAs where you can ask questions directly to RAs. So a lot of these, what are the most challenging parts or most rewarding? What does the average week of an RA look like? Those are going to be great questions for our current RAs. And those are going to be September 1st at 7 p.m., September 16th at 7 p.m. and October 22nd at 7 p.m. So definitely get those down. If for any reason all of those passed and you still have questions that haven't been answered, you can email us at reslifeselection@ucf.edu. But I definitely suggest come to these Q&As and ask it there first. We really want that to be kind of where we give all of our knowledge out, because as Kaila said, if we keep having to spend time replying to each person one at a time, that takes a lot more time from us reviewing applications, planning the interview schedule, everything like that, where a lot of people may have the same questions, and it's a lot easier for us to answer them for everyone on these live Q&As. So definitely come to the rest of them that we have to ask your questions.
Yeah, and another great thing, I know we mentioned it throughout, but there is a required component of watching an informational video. So if you haven't yet watched it, definitely check it out. It's on our UCF Housing website. And so housing.ucf.edu/employment/resident assistant. If you've been on the application yet, it is plastered all over the application. It's on all of our flyers, that direct link. And Hailee and I recorded ourselves for a full hour talking about every single step. The slides that we've been pulling up, those are directly from that info session. And so we talked about everything from living learning communities to the application to interview tips, to the timeline, of the hiring timeline, and everything like that. So that's a required component. And on the application, we ask specific questions from that video. So make sure you check it out. If you're not sure about the position, you're like, oh, I want to learn more about it, that video is a great way to get some questions answered. So our goal for this, because we normally do these info sessions in person, our goal for this is to still provide all of you a chance to ask questions to us. Hailee and I specifically work on the back end. So we're the ones who manage like the actual system, and we're the ones helping the committee to review the applications and plan the logistics of the process. But our RAs they're really the ones that are working. They're the ones doing the job. They're the ones with the best experience. I did see that a couple of them commented here, in this comment box. So read those and hear from our staff. There are lots of great opportunities to work for housing, and the resident assistant position is definitely one of them. So I encourage you to take the time to review and to come to those Q&As with our RAs. We have some phenomenal RAs. We have 199 of the best, and I might be a little biased, but I think we have 199 of the best RAs that you can find. So we're excited to have them here to answer your questions and to know what it's like to be an RA. I just want to clarify that you don't have to have lived on campus before to apply to be an RA. So it may be a new experience, and there's no such thing as a dumb question. If you're not comfortable asking a question, or maybe you're watching on YouTube and you don't know how to leave a question on the comment box, email us at reslifeselection any questions you might have, and let us know, like, hey, can you answer this on the September 1st Q&A? And we will make sure our staff does that. All right, reslifeselection@ucf.edu. That email inbox is managed by Hailee and myself. So if you email it, one of us will respond back to you. We really thank you for the time that you spent with us tonight. This is the first time we've ever done this. So we're really excited that so many of you joined us and asked us some questions. We'll continue to monitor this comment box, and we'll answer as many as we can. If we don't get to answer your question tonight, we'll try to answer the comments, and we'll also try answering it next time. So our next one is September 10th. So you'll see our faces September 10th at 6 p.m. Thank you. We're really excited for your interest in the position. And, I think I can speak on behalf of both Hailee and I. Reviewing these applications is one of the highlights of the work we do. Getting to see your excitement and your passion. That's why we do what we do. We're both here over the selection process because we want to make an awesome experience for our residents. And that starts with a very, very intense focus on our applications. And so thank you for your time tonight. And we look forward to reviewing your application. Have a good night.